Well, thank you so much for joining us live or for watching us later, as we will be putting this link up on our YouTube page afterwards, Rocky Mountain Emmy. Just want to say thank you for joining us for this very first Lunch and Learn in our week-long workshop. Lots of good stuff, so please come back each afternoon. There's some different times, so just be sure to head over to rockymountainemmy.org and go under the student section for all of those times and our special guests each day. In the chat, I've already dropped a few helpful links, including the link to the YouTube to find this video later. Also, the call for entries for the Student Production Awards is going on right now. So we would love for you to share your work that you have been working so hard on throughout the school year. Pick out the stuff you're most proudest of and please share it with us and enter it. And high school students, it is free to enter, so that is fantastic. You can check out all that info and the links in the chat. And now I want to hand it over to our 12 News KPNX here in Phoenix, Arizona, Will Pitts. He is beyond a multimedia journalist. We call him a multi-skilled journalist. He really can do it all and do it all very well. He is the guru of gadgets, and he could make all kinds of creative shots with, really cool tech that's out now, but also stuff that you might find around the house that you could use to your advantage to really make your work stand out. So now over to you, Will.
Thank you. Yes, I am a multi-skilled journalist. We like to say that it's an MMJ, but a little bit better. Basically, what I do is everything, for lack of a better term. I am the one-man band that kind of can do all of it. I can shoot, I write, I edit, I report, I go in front of the camera, I do web, I do social media, I do a little bit of everything. And what makes us multi-skilled besides that is we don't use the traditional big, the big shoulder cameras, you know, the gigantic 60-pound sets of gear that we always see the photographers with. This is my gear. This is the whole thing. That's my camera right there. And sometimes I don't even use that. Sometimes I use something much smaller. We will use anything that we can possibly use to get a good image out of. I'll use GoPros, I'll use DSLRs, I'll use my phone, I'll use anything. Anything that we need that fits the shot and fits the story that we're trying to do, that's what I will use. And one of the hallmarks of the MSJ program is being able to be as creative as you want and using that creativity to tell stories in different ways. Let me share my screen here and I'll start showing you some things here. Okay, let's get away from that because we've already played that one. Come on. Hang on. There we go. Let me pop up the chat just in case. By the way, if anybody has questions, feel free to unmute or pop questions in the chat and I will respond to them there. So here's a quick example of what we are talking about when we say that we do things differently. And by the way, the MSJ thing is something that Tegna, our parent company, which owns at this point 50 some odd stations across the country, it basically invented and rolled out nationwide to all the stations that we own. And when we say creativity, a lot of times we're talking about how you tell a story. A lot of times we're also talking about things like stand-ups. Here's a couple of MSJ stand-ups that I've done to kind of show you the creativity we're talking about.
The task force basically laid out a how-to for police departments to get that trust back. It goes step by step, everything from considering how use of force will impact public trust to hiring more minority police officers. Now, the Mesa Police Department's report is more than 100 pages long. It also goes point by point and shows what Mesa is doing right and what the chief says it could be doing better. Most people use drones for pretty video, Hollywood, but Soto sees drones the same way early computer programmers saw computers. The smaller drones got, the more he saw applications beyond the military and beyond toys. He thinks they'll let companies get a lot more done faster and
It's a little old, but still.
This thing doesn't have moods.
All those photos are in a database, so city engineers can go back and take a look at every single one of them from year to year to see how the roads have aged and which ones need to be replaced.
So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about creativity. We're talking about doing things in a different way that you wouldn't expect, something that is attention grabbing but not obnoxious. Every one of those forwarded the story in some way, but also was different enough that it was enough to grab somebody's attention and make them pay attention through the story, at least the boring part of the story, that we can turn into a stand-up and make something interactive, something fun, something different, something attention grabbing. Now, here's another example of a day turn that I did a while ago, using all of the gadgets, the GoPros, the cameras, the everything, and the different techniques. This was a while ago, part of our Verify series. And it was basically a Verify road trip, as we called it. And we took somebody who had a question or who had an email that's sent to us, and we took her to find the answer.
It looks easy in all the movies. Just walk up to a window and punch it with your hand. It shatters, right? Well, we wanted to find out exactly how true that really is. How hard is it to break a car window if you really had to?
I saw this medium-sized dog in the back seat.
It was hot. Megan Gibson could only do one thing.
I get on the phone, I'm calling the police.
What she wanted to do was break into the car, but she couldn't. Not if she didn't want to get sued.
There could potentially be repercussions where I would be at fault if I'm actually going to try to take action.
But under the new Good Samaritan bill, Megan could break the windows to rescue a dog or child. She'd have to call the cops first and have a good faith belief that they're in danger. We have to get you all safetied up here.
Yes.
Get your gloves on. There's your glasses.
Okay.
We brought Megan on a Verify road trip to see what it would have taken to rescue that dog. You've never broken a window in a car before?
I've never broken a window in a car.
Okay, me
no.
neither. This will be entertaining.
First time for everything.
Start off with something like this. Regular pry bar. People might have this in the back of their car, in the back of their truck, whatever.
Grab.
Let's try this first.
Okay.
See if we can break this window. Do you think it's going to be easy?
No, I do not think it's easy. I have heard that corners are kind of sort of easy, but I know it's pretty difficult. Wow. Oh my God, that's a lot of power.
The pry bar was a dud. You want to try hitting it like that?
Yeah, sure. I'm already killing my hands, but sure, why not? Oh my God. Whoa, camera's gone.
No luck there either, and Megan's not a weakling. My turn to try. I really had to whack that thing. We had one more tool to try, and it's, you know, your typical safety equipment, but it's got the glass punch on the front. You want to try that one?
Sure.
Okay, let's try
that one out. That one feels like it's starting to. There we go. The reality is, it takes a lot of power, a lot of strength.
And when you're done, there's glass everywhere.
You have to be so careful because if there are individuals in there, then you want to make sure that they're not getting blasted with glass.
So if the bill does pass, know that it's not quite as easy as you think and could be a little dangerous. In Phoenix, William Pitts, 12 News.
That bill actually ended up passing. That was also a day turn, and that was a one-man band story. So there were no other people around. It was me, no photog, no nothing. There were GoPros all over the car. I had a couple of those. My main camera, which I was just changing up the shots in the middle of the interview. And there we go. And it was something different, something that people hadn't seen before. And we got to get a car basically donated to us by a junkyard that we could completely destroy. I'm going to show you one other example, and this is from Brendan Keefe in Atlanta. This is a totally different way to tell the most boring political story I can think of, which is, what is the platform for the party? If you don't know what it is, well, he'll explain to you what it is. But one of the things that we also teach is that things have to be as long as they need to be to tell the story, as long as they're not obnoxious. This is a story that is about 1:45 long, and more than half of it is a stand-up.
Bernie delegates walk out of the convention hall. But Sanders supporters are still claiming victory because they reshaped the Democratic Party and its platform.
Presuming Hillary becomes a president, we need to hold her to the platform that the Democratic Party has agreed to.
Have you read the platform?
I'm aware of several issues in it, but I have not seen it.
I think everything that I've seen, I like it. I have not read the entire platform, I'm sorry to say.
It's all hammered out. The Democratic Party platform. A political platform isn't something you stand on, but rather a declaration of what the party stands for. And it's made up of planks, individual policies that made the cut. A big win for Bernie Sanders, the $15 an hour minimum wage, now solidly attached to the Democratic Party platform. Democrats have always been against the death penalty, but now, thanks to Sanders, They're in favor of abolishing the death penalty in all 50 states. In universal health care, the public or government option is once again on the table and part of the platform. Bernie wanted free college education for everyone. In a compromise, he got free community college and debt-free college for everyone else. But it's all non-binding. What does that mean? It means Hillary Clinton can cross out any of these items that she wants and paint her own picture of America and of her campaign, regardless of what the platform said.
The people that Bernie brought on are definitely more progressive. I don't know if they're going to stick with the Democratic Party. That's the question.
At the Democratic National Convention, I'm Brendan.
I think Brendan turned that in 4 hours and a trip to Home Depot, which is, you would never have thought to build an actual platform to show what the Democratic Party platform is. One of the other things that we do is called multi-camera. And you see this all the time in large productions, so you'd think it's not a big deal. But as a one-man band, it is kind of a big deal. We use at least 3 to 4 cameras per shoot. And that's the reason that we use simple cameras like a GoPro, cameras like this, and other cameras like, I've got a couple that I'll show you in a minute. But the reason that we do this is so that we have so many different angles, and it just ups the production value of all of our stories. This is an example of, you can see there's a camera behind the guy being interviewed in the purple shirt. There's a camera next to Brendan. There's that camera is actually shooting in 4K, which allows him to crop in to the center picture there, while the real shot is the one on the lower left. And when I said we use whatever we can to get the shot, this is what I'm talking about. We MacGyver the crap out of things. This is an interview that was obtained on the road, on vacation, with no notice at all. The only thing that they had was the little handy cam and a mic, which is fine, no tripod, no nothing. So he clamped it to the suitcase, set up in front of the Capitol, shot the interview with the guy who had just a couple of minutes, and it ended up looking like that. So you can use anything you can figure out. You're kind of like the MacGyver of TV to try and figure out how to do this thing. And the other fun thing that this demonstrates, and this actually might play.
These police officers are operating on behalf of a private organization in order to prohibit the public from seeing laws that are going to affect all of us.
Brendan.
So yeah, I won't go with that. But the thing that this shows, I'll go back a little bit, is a concept that if you learn it now when you're still a student, you will be so far ahead when you get your first job. It's called background compression. That looks like the Capitol is directly behind him. The Capitol, if you remember from these photos back here, the Capitol is miles away. But if you pull the camera back and zoom in, it compresses the background so that it looks like he is just right there. It's a really handy concept. All right, the fun stuff. Gadgets and gizmos. Look at everything that you have. Look at things in your toolbox. Look at your gear that you get from school, from everywhere else. Look at your kitchen. Look at Amazon and think, can I use this to do something creative? So, GoPros. Yes, this is a very old photo of a GoPro, but you know, we use what we can find for free on clip art. We're not going to act like we invented the GoPro, or that, oh my God, have you seen this thing called a GoPro? It takes great video. What we use it for is not necessarily what GoPro would like you to use it for. We don't jump out of planes with it. We use it for an actual camera. We use it for a secondary camera that is completely idiot proof also, but it also gets incredible video. I'll show you an example here of what you can do with just a GoPro when you come across a situation that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do anything with. This was a situation where I was doing a story on the crime lab in Scottsdale, investigating the the freeway shooter from a couple of years ago. You guys probably don't remember that, but look it up. I feel old now. But what I got was the crime lab in Scottsdale was testing a bunch of bullets, and they said I could shoot it, but I had to stay on the other side of the glass and I couldn't go inside. Well, that makes for really bad video because I have to zoom through glass. I can't move. It's all the same shot. It's just boring video. So instead, I gave one of the technicians this, and I said, go do your entire thing, narrate it for me, just walk it through and point this at whatever you're talking about. And this is what I got.
Developing now, DPS says it is teaming up with Phoenix PD to hand out flyers asking for tips in the freeway shooting cases. Now, remember, there is still no official suspect, and DPS also not saying anything about how
At
they're
ASU, you
going
might
about
recognize her.
catching the shooter.
William Pitts joins us live now with an inside look at a crime lab and one method that they may be using. Will?
Mark, DPS isn't saying if they've recovered any bullets from the shootings all along I-10, but if they have, these tests will go a long way toward determining if they have the right suspect. At least 7 bullets that we know of fired into cars and trucks, and every bullet has its own fingerprint, a way for cops to find out where it came from.
Well, say, for example, you had a homicide, and you have the projectile that was taken from a victim might be matched with a shell casing that was found in a suspect's vehicle.
Even without the gun, former ATF Special Agent Bernard Zaper says a bullet can tie a suspect to the crime.
This has been done for a long time, but it's been done literally by a technician with a microscope.
Scottsdale PD's forensics lab does those tests all the time. To match up a bullet with a gun, they fire the gun into this giant water tank. Then they can compare both bullets.
What we're looking for are striated markings on those bullets that may indicate whether or not it had come from the same firearm.
We're not allowed in the lab, but Stephen Valdez took one of our cameras in to show what goes on.
What we have is a rifle that we positioned in place.
It's literally a rifle with a string. Stand off to the side and pull it. The bullet stays in the tank for the scientists to fish out later. If this had been a real case, they'd spend hours comparing this bullet to others.
It's backbreaking work, and the skill of the analyst really comes into play.
DPS won't say anything about the test it's running or even what it's recovered, but this could be one way they'll catch their shooter. Now, there are a lot of other ways guns can mark up a bullet or a shell casing, and if you think the local cops know a lot about this, think of it this way: the FBI and the ATF are also on this case. Live in Phoenix, William Pitts, 12 News.
So that was a way to get a story that you would not have otherwise been able to get, or at least video that you wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. Because I'm not going to hand a crime scene technician, as smart as they are, I'm not going to hand them this thing because they're not going to know how to work it, and I don't have time to show them. This thing is press a button, off you go. Here's another example of what you can do with the GoPro in tight spaces. This is also a stand-up that when I saw it blew my mind the first time. Maybe. Hold on. Let's back up. All right, well, that one's not going to work. So we'll just skip it on to another story that shows basically the same thing. This is really good for getting into small spaces. And that seems like a no-brainer, but we're not talking about spelunking. We're not talking about going in a cave. We're not talking about, trying to figure out how to stick this underwater so that you can shoot yourself scuba diving. This is honestly one of the best stories I've seen in a long time, but you will probably not be able to tell which one of these cameras is the GoPro and which one is the main camera, but I can tell you without the GoPro, he would not have been able to fit in this building.
As the modern high-tech world in Houston speeds on by, it slows to a crawl and backs up a few decades. At the corner of Dowling and Wheeler.
Yes, this is Smitty at the Universal Typewriter.
Where Edward Smitty Smith,
on the paper,
in a rundown A-frame shack,
it's got good on feed and motion,
is buried almost.
Every one machine that goes out 2 to 3 comes in
his life's work.
This is old technology. I'm an old person with old technology.
He's been working on this old technology in this old building since 1967. It used to be big business until computers rendered the Remingtons, the Underwoods, and the Royals obsolete.
It's been around. I've been around.
But when someone needs an old typewriter fixed...
Did you want to pick it up today or tomorrow?
Smitty is pretty much...
I think you'll be proud of the way it looks and the way it types.
The only game in town.
All right, thank you. All right, have a good one. We're going to have more room. It's just like anything else, it takes a little time.
And time is why he does all this in the first place.
And if I wasn't doing this, I would be dead again.
He's talking about his 3 heart attacks. The last one on the sidewalk, not far from his front door.
But they wasn't ready for me, so they sent me back. There were more typewriters to fix. I died right out there on the sidewalk, so he let me come back. So this is giving me something to do. to stay alive.
Now, it's worth noting that in all this mess that's keeping him alive,
I don't care for computers.
there is one very old computer crammed in the back corner.
Of course. That's where I type all of my invoices.
Even he needs the machine that sent all these relics to an early grave.
I have nothing against modern technology, because this is what makes the world turn.
And as the modern world keeps turning, there are lessons to learn in all this mess from a 79-year-old man with a bad heart that's clearly in the right place.
I do it because I enjoy doing it. If you enjoy your work like I enjoy mine, you'll live a long time.
And that's the plan at Universal Typewriter Shop.
Thank you for calling. All right.
Where Smitty says all this work is like paying a tithe, paying for his time.
Do something for somebody else. So that's paying your tithes. And that's all of the preaching I'm going to do today.
A sermon and just maybe a few of the keys to life, courtesy of Smitty and his little shack on Houston's southwest side. If you need an old typewriter fixed, be patient. He's taking his time. He'll get to it when he can.
This is Smitty at Universal Typewriter.
Keeping a few old relics and himself alive as the world continues to speed on by. Kevin Reese, KHOU 11 News.
One of the things that you see in that story, to bookend the entire thing and in the middle of it, is the time lapse of the streets in Houston, where that story was. And how he did that is with a GoPro and an egg timer. Now unfortunately, this one has been discontinued, but I do have another one that I got off of Amazon that's basically the same. I hope you can see the camera here. I may unshare here in just a second. But you take that little egg timer, you stick a GoPro on the top of it, and you get absolute time-lapse magic. Now let me stop this share for just a second so you can actually see what I'm talking about here. So this is the egg timer that I found. It's just a kitchen timer on Amazon. I think it was like, well, inflation, it's like $8, $9. But all it does is turn to set it like that. You put the GoPro on top of it, and if you set this thing down, this top part spins around. So all you have to do when you get done, I got it. All you have to do when you get done is speed that video up, and you get some amazing time lapses. Here's an example of how you can use the time lapse function to make your stories so much more memorable, and frankly, cover a lot of video that you may not have any video to cover. Second. Come on. There we go.
Safe to say that people who bought land out here didn't really want any neighbors. There is nothing around here for miles on end, but turns out they do have a neighbor, one they say they didn't know anything about. Right across the street that goes in the middle of their property is a military defense contractor.
I wanted to build a little camp with a little retreat center.
This patch of desert is Carla Lee's retirement. Miles from anyone and anything.
Surrounded by the Sonora National Monument and BLM land, and the rest of the land was agricultural. So we figured we're good.
Carla and 4 other people bought land out here and say they never knew what was across the road. A Scottsdale company called Dillon Aero builds miniguns, machine guns that pump out 3,000 rounds a minute.
One misfire is 50 shells.
Dillon's 610-acre testing range is all around Carla's desert retirement. The landowners claim Dillon has even asked them to leave their property when the shooting starts.
They have to clear off 99th Avenue. Well, it cuts right through our land, so I don't know how we can be safe in a house.
Dillon has apparently been shooting there for years, but never tried to get the land zoned as a range before now. Carla and the rest of the landowners say they're stuck. They can either live next to a machine gun range or try to sell their land.
I can't even imagine trying to list it and then disclaim, say, oh, excuse me, by the way, you have just a little mini Afghanistan going on in the front yard.
Dillon Aero sent a statement saying the County Planning and Zoning Commission said it would approve the zoning if they work with the neighbors. The company also said it's heavily inspected and has to adhere to strict safety regulations. Now, the landowners say they're supposed to have a meeting with Dylan on Friday to decide, or at least talk about what they can do out here. But they say if nobody makes an offer, they might be stuck with some useless land. Near Maricopa, William Pitts, 12 News.
All right, you also might be wondering at this point, I have no photog. How am I getting this shot that's walking in front of me and walking backwards that's also very, very steady? That's this thing. This is an Osmo Pocket. It is a tiny little Steadicam. If I turn it on, you'll see it's just the camera from a drone with a little screen on it. Very, very stable, very steady. And honestly, all you have to do is hook this up to a painter's pole or any kind of, monopod, anything, and just stick it out in front of you. And it follows you like a photog. It's the greatest little invention of all time. This thing is kind of expensive. It's about $400, but about the same cost as a GoPro. I use this thing probably every single day, and it is one of the greatest gadgets that I have. All right, let's continue here. There's another example of time lapses and how they can make everything look a little bit better. This is just a time lapse of the governor's office here in Arizona. And what I liked about that was, let me see if I can replay it. There we go. It gives me all of this negative space over here next to the building that I can put in a graphic or a statement or anything that I might need to put in there. Here's another thing that I found on Amazon. This is a cell phone mount. You might have seen these things. They are very little steel balls with a adhesive back to them. You stick them on your dashboard and you put the magnet on the back of your phone. Then you can just slap your phone on top of the magnet on your dashboard. The phone doesn't go anywhere. So we thought, yeah, that's really great. But what if we made a camera mount out of it and stuck it to the side of the camera? So this was an old little camera that we had called a Polaroid Cube. They don't make these anymore, but you can use these for pretty much anything, including a GoPro or anything else that you can mount on the bottom of it. And you just stick it to the side of your camera, and then all of a sudden you have two cameras, one that is very wide and one that is right close with your main camera. So you've got your main camera here for a close-up on somebody. Off to the side, you've got a wide shot. You just shot with two cameras, and you didn't even have to set anything up. And all it cost was $3, $4 on Amazon. The Osmo Pocket, show you another example of a stand-up and how useful it can be to create a really memorable stand-up.
Let's face it, these days, who we are in person isn't as trusted as what people see on a computer screen. Our identity has been reduced to pure data, zeros and ones that can be stolen, allowing strangers to impersonate us and use our good name to do bad things. Facing rising medical costs, there's a huge incentive for a thief to use someone else's insurance, sticking the real us with the deductible and copay for a stranger's treatment.
So that was a stand-up on identity theft, and Brendan honestly just shot 4 of his coworkers, or 5 of his coworkers, I don't remember how many, doing those lines that he had already written for his stand-up, and then just timed it. He started the iPad playing back when he was walking down the hall, lifted it up in front of his face. They continued the stand-up. He only had to say the front and the back of that, and held this thing out in front of him, and it looked like a photographer following down the hallway. Very memorable way to do that. All right, this is another gadget. And unfortunately, I didn't bring this in, but well, no, I didn't bring it in with me, but this is called a Pico Dolly. This is also incredibly cheap and gives you a lot of production value to make things memorable. It's a little roller skate that you can mount a camera on top of, and you get the same dolly effect, which is a rolling shot without paying the $3,000 for a very, very nice dolly. So here's what you can do.
Unlike others, this map doesn't stop at the county line. Chanel Anderson's last breaths spent trying to help dispatchers
that rolling
find
shot up is all on the roller skate.
Have been heard across the nation as a cry to fix 911 on this
all circling around those
report
documents
produced by his own
just for the roller
911 Modernization Commission. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation is seeing more and more cases where victims were targeted using EXIF data hidden in their own photos.
That's just this little roller skate rolling up on something that we've set up on a desk or on a table, something like that. Gives it just a little bit more production value, because you see this shot right here and you think, okay, that's fine. But if it rolls up on it, that's totally different. This is another thing that used to be expensive and is not anymore. It was called a Rolocam. Now you can get a knockoff on this, knockoff of this on Amazon for absolutely nothing. I think they are maybe 20 bucks at this point. It is a motorized dolly that just goes either back and forth or just goes continually until it stops. And you can mount a phone on this, whatever you want to do, and it just goes side to side without you having to worry about it. So you'll get shots like this.
Spending 4 days locked up inside the Rockdale County Jail. While nurses were taking the newborn's footprints, jailers were taking her father's fingerprints.
They came in here.
The story. The other thing that we use a lot is cell phones, and that kind of gets a bad rap, but it's not meant to be your primary camera, and it's not meant to be a restriction. It's meant to be used for a purpose. I use my cell phone for a lot of, situations where I have to be highly mobile, situations where I need to not look like I'm, working for a TV station, where I need to be sort of incognito. Sometimes there's a safety aspect involved. There's a whole bunch of reasons that you can do this. And one of the best things that you can do is look for apps in the App Store and say, what could I use this for? Yeah, this is interesting, but could I use this to tell a story in some way? So we got a whole bunch of examples of some apps that you can use. And I may have actually included one that you may not need. Molecules, that's kind of a fun one if you have a scientific story or whatever. LED audio, I use this all the time. Let me fire this thing up. I hope it's still actually on here. LED audio I use for phone interviews and a whole bunch of other things to show the audio. I will use this for, let me show you. I'll use this thing for 911 calls. I'll use this for phone interviews, whatever else. And it responds, you can see it's responding to my voice whenever it hears audio. So I will set this up on a table, light it with some fun lighting, and roll up on it with that little Pico Dolly. And it gives you something extra to look at other than that really boring graphic that you always see on TV of, the little spinning reel-to-reels that nobody's used in 60 years. People still use that all the time. It means nothing to anybody because nobody knows what a reel-to-reel is anymore. But LED audio is something that you can use to spice up basically boring sound. Fire this up again. And let me see here. Hyperlapse on Instagram. This is something that is now baked into your iPhone if you have it. If you have an Android, it might be, I don't know, but definitely hyperlapse. Now, what we used to do for phones is, and frankly, most TV stations still do this, I'm not sure about colleges, but you used to have this ungodly getup where you have a phone that's hooked into an audio board that's hooked into a computer that you have to seize the line, flick the switches. It hasn't changed since 1975, but instead, we have a voice memo app on our phone. We may as well use it. I routinely do phoners in my car because it's connected to the Bluetooth in the car, and just start rolling voice memo on my phone while it's playing through the speakers. Everything else is quiet enough. I just use that and forward the audio to myself, email it to myself, pop it into my editing system, and you're done. A couple of others here. I haven't taken this off. Bubbly, that doesn't exist anymore, but it doesn't matter. Touch Blur is one that is very, very useful, especially when you're doing posting to social media on the fly. Touch Blur will blur any photo that you have, export it back out. Usually you would have had to, throw that into Photoshop or throw that into, something else and do blurring and blur masks and all this other fun stuff. This thing literally just touch the photo and it blurs it right out. You are done within a couple of seconds. This is why that is important to do very, very quickly. Yes, you can pop it into Lightroom if you want to and blur it that way, but this is so much faster. This is from a couple of years ago. Obviously, you have helicopter video of a naked woman on a big rig truck roof in Houston. You can't just go ahead and post that. You got to blur it. Well, what Kevin did was take the photo off of the helicopter video, blur it very quickly, and send it out. Because he was able to do that in no time at all, that was the first tweet that went out. They got incredible traffic based on it. Another thing that we like to do is negative space. And this is something that you just kind of have to think about when you go somewhere. What is a really cool shot that I can use to put in a graphic, put in a statement. I mentioned that earlier with the time lapse. You can do it with just a still shot or just a still video when you're trying to compose your shot. This is a great shot of, I believe it's the state legislature. And you can put a statement to the right of that microphone and just drop it in there in text. And it's a really nice, really composed shot. Didn't take any more time. It's very, very easy to do. I'm actually showing that must just be an example of something else. One of the other things that we use is Google Earth Studio and Google Earth Pro. These are two different apps that basically do the same thing. They are both free online. Google Earth Studio is web-based. Google Earth Pro is a program that you actually have to download and install on your laptop. They both do sort of different things. Studio is faster. I like Google Earth Pro a little better because you can add more stuff to it. But it is very, very helpful. You know, you guys are in college, you don't have a chopper. I understand that. Half the time, I don't have a chopper. But what I do have is Google Earth's incredible 3D mapping and 3D buildings. So this is, I think this is downtown Atlanta. You can create flybys, you can create fly-throughs, you can put graphics on top of these things and basically fly all over the place. You can show anything from an aerial perspective. And, you know, it's not completely, totally up to date. You know, if something was built in the last 3 weeks, obviously it's not going to be in there, but it's very, very handy for most buildings and most situations. You know, here's something showing the State House in Atlanta. You know, I believe it was a route that somebody was going to be taking through that whole thing. I mean, yes, it looks 3D, but it's gorgeous. And it is so much more interesting than just throwing up some, you know, standard B-roll video from the street of some random things. I'll play that back again. Oops. There we go. Some random B-roll video from the side of the road of the State House, and you're trying to explain where things are. Well, you can get up in the air now, you know, miles in the air if you want to, and actually show people the relationship between streets, buildings, all of this stuff. Very, very handy. And of course, the best part is free. So that is what I do, and a whole bunch of my, stop sharing that, a whole bunch of my toys. Let me see if I have any other, like I said, I will use literally anything to get the shot that I need. I know there's only a couple of people, but I always like to ask, does anybody know what the best camera is that you can possibly use? Feel free to unmute, there's only a couple of you.
Is it your iPhone?
In a sense, yes. The best camera that you can possibly use is the camera that you have on you. And whether that's your iPhone, your GoPro, the Steadicam, anything, it's the camera that you have access to right now. Because if something's going on and you need to shoot, you are not going to have time to wait to, okay, let me go back to the car, let me drag this thing out. Let me go, you know, I'd really like to use the Steadicam. Hold on, let me go to my suitcase or my gear bag and let me bust this thing out, assemble it, and get it ready to go. You have 3 seconds to fire this up and be ready to go. Whatever camera you have available to you is the best one. And that's kind of the main theory behind being an MSJ is we'll use whatever we have and whatever the story dictates. So that is kind of an explanation of Android phones. Yes, Android phones are good too. Anything that you've got on you absolutely works. There are a bunch of apps that I don't think I included on here also that I really, really like. I don't have an Android phone, but I know there are versions of these apps for them. Mavis and Filmic Pro, F-I-L-M-I-C. Let me see if I can fire one of these up real quick. Filmic Pro, these are very handy. What these do is give you full manual control over your phone. So it lets you change the iris, it lets you change the shutter speed, it lets you change pretty much anything that you can't do with just the camera app. It basically turns your iPhone into that. Very, very handy. It is about 15, 20 bucks, but I think it's the best 20 bucks I've ever spent. I've shot entire stories with just the Mavis or Filmic Pro app. Sweep stories, no less, you know, 3-4 minute stories with just the phone. And I guarantee nobody knew what camera I use those. Are you a fan of editing on your phone or you prefer a laptop? I will never edit on my phone. It takes forever to figure out how to do that. Plus, there is not a single phone on earth that has the abilities that our editing systems do. You can do so much more. None of those stand-ups that I showed earlier would have been possible on a phone. You just can't do it. I will 100% use a nonlinear editor such as Premiere, Edius, Final Cut, anything over editing on your phone. I know it's come a long way, but no, absolutely not. It's it actually ends up looking like you edited on your phone, which is not what you really want to do. There are a lot of things that it's totally fine to look like, you know, it's a YouTube video. Frankly, a lot of YouTube videos look better than some of the stuff you'll see on TV, but you try to make it look as good as possible. And if you can make it look better than a YouTube video, you should definitely try to do that. So yeah, no, I'll never edit on my phone unless I absolutely have to.
You could only choose one piece of equipment or gadget. What would you take with you?
That 100%. I'll show you why. This thing, it's fairly new, but I absolutely love it. The reason I would take this thing is it is a full-on camera in every possible way. It comes with this little thing at the bottom, which you snap it on here, and then that turns this thing into a wireless mic. Plug in a lav, set this where I want, and it also has facial tracking, which is incredible too. You just hook this up to your phone, circle yourself, and it will track your face wherever you go. So I can do stand-ups where the camera is 20 feet away from me and it just follows me in a circle wherever I need to go. And the audio is perfect. One of the things that we also teach people, speaking of audio, is bad audio is worse than bad video. People will forgive a lot of things if it's bad video, you know, cell phone video, grainy video, black and white video. They will not forgive if your audio sounds like crap. That is the biggest thing. So if you've got a way to make your audio better than your video, absolutely do that every time. So that's my go-to. In fact, I'm undoubtedly taking that on a trip on Sunday. So yeah, that's my gig. But any other questions? No? All right, I'll turn it back over to Crystal then.
Thank you so much, Will. I am so thankful for your time, and to say that you are a team member of mine. You inspire all of us here. Thank you for sharing all of your talents and tricks and tips with the rest of us. We really appreciate all of it. Thank you, Will, so much. And for those of you watching this now, please join us again tomorrow. We will be live once again, 1 hour earlier though. So 11 o'clock in the morning in Arizona. But if you're going to be tuning in from New Mexico, it will be noontime. We have a special guest from Santa Fe Community College that will be talking about film, a little bit more film focused, and how the evolution has gone from movie making to now streaming your favorite TV show. So it's sure to be really interesting. So please join us tomorrow. And I see Will dropped his email in the chat. So you can also use that to reach out to him with any questions. And we're always here for you. So on behalf of the Rocky Mountain Emmys, thank you guys so much for joining. We'll see you soon.
And also, Crystal, just in case, I don't think the chat pops up on the recording, so I'll just say it, WPITTS, WPITTS at 12news.com, just in case, because if the chat doesn't pop up on the recording, they'll never see it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Will. Okay, thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.